We are joined right now by a senior writer and a college basketball analyst for CBS Sports. He is co-host of CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast. Matt and his laptop will be performing with Guster this August. He is part of CBS Sports HQ's special draft coverage all night long. It gets underway at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Matt Norlander is my guest. Matt, good to have you back. How are you?
I'm doing well, yes. That Guster thing still is planned for August. Ben still assures me that's going to happen. And I'm happy and thrilled to be joining you and get you that much closer to tomorrow's smack-off. I know your audience is champing at the bit and eager to move this thing along, so I'm happy to be here.
Nice to have you here. We're all fired up for it. But you got the NBA draft, and you have been covering the draft for more than a decade right now. Matt, can you remember a time when there were three candidates who could go number one, who was closely packed together as Paolo Banchero, Jabari Smith, and Chet Holmgren?
Nope. I believe that the discussion and at least the debate over the validity of each of those guys to be the number one prospect is as intense as we've ever had for a draft. I'm talking with three specific players. Some people have said it's really Chet versus Jabari. I maintain Paolo Banchero will be the rookie of the year no matter where he's drafted and will wind up having the best NBA career of any player in this draft. But it has been a really fun thing, not just leading up to the draft, Jim, but I go back to November when Gonzaga played Duke and Chet went against Paolo Banchero in that setting. And at that time, Jabari Smith, you know, at the start of the college season, he was seen as an NBA pick, and then with a quickness, he started to become a guy that was thought to be, all right, potential first-round material. And I'm going to give Archie Miller, who's now the head coach at Rhode Island, props. He was the very first person who I ever heard say Jabari Smith should be the number one pick in the NBA draft. And he did this long before anyone was really talking about it. And in a few hours here, it looks like Archie Miller might have been the soothsayer among all of them, because it appears, although there's been some wild betting market movement, it appears, and talking to a few people at the NBA level, the expectation still is that Orlando will take Jabari at number one.
Matt Norlander is joining us. The betting movement has been wild. I agree. I've been watching this. It's amazing to see the way this has been going. So what about Smith? If he goes number one, you have him number two in your mock draft. For people who did not get the chance to see him at Auburn, how would you describe his game?
Jabari Smith he is super smooth, polished, yet there is some rawness to his game, but the reason why he's probably going to go number one and the reason why a lot of people grade him as the best prospect in the draft is because of his combination of height. He's 6'10". He's a 6'10" guy who took 187 three-pointers at Auburn last season and made 42% of them. Like, very, very efficient. Also a good foul shooter, and that is something where if you're an NBA GM, a scout, they take a lot of stock into, can this guy shoot reliably and consistently from beyond the three-point line? And then at the foul line, is he a good one? And Jabari Smith shot 80%. So he has a sterling reputation. I mean, I talked with Bruce Pearl about him multiple times this past season, and I think Pearl has begun to echo this talking point that he shared with me back in the middle of the season. But he said Jabari Smith is the first player that he ever coached in college where he felt like he was like in the presence of a guy who would go on and be a multi-time all-star in the NBA and like a surefire, sure thing, super mature. Also a guy that, although he's not, like, I understand a lot of people might start to know about Jabari Smith now because he had a nasty dunk in the tournament. Auburn was, a 2 seed, although they didn't make a super deep run. They're not super familiar with him the way they are with Banchero, or they are Chet Holmgren, or maybe even Jaden Ivey. But, in his interviews and at least, in terms of his reputation, Jabari Smith is like the guy everyone in the locker room loves, great teammate, super fun to be around, really amazing personality, kind of passes every background check you could possibly imagine. And, yeah, if you could build a modern NBA player in a lab, you'd want someone like Jabari Smith. Super long, very athletic, defensively capable, can shoot the three, and it's because of so many of those attributes that he's put himself in a position to go number one tonight.
Matt Norlander is joining us. All right, Matt, so let's go back to Banchero for a minute. You've made the point that he is the most NBA-ready player in this draft. So having said what you just said, and I heard that, but does he have the highest ceiling in the draft, or is he the safest pick in the draft?
I think he's the safest. He's the best combination of safest pick and proven commodity at this point. He doesn't have the highest ceiling. Chet Holmgren has the highest ceiling because Holmgren, being 7 feet, can bring the ball up, shoot from beyond the arc. There's a lot of attributes there. We can get to that in a second if you want. I was around Holmgren plenty. I was around Banchero. I mean, I was on the Coach K farewell tour for the final quarter of Duke's season there, and so I saw Banchero in person early on and then at the end of the season, and no one has his combination of skills. I mean, Banchero, you can play an offense through him, or he can be a facilitator. He is a great, not a good, he is a great distributor, has really good vision, very good passer. He can play the post, but he's also capable of bringing the ball up the floor or taking it off the screen, creating off the bounce, and he has something where if you watch Duke and Banchero play a lot this season, he can score with brute force just as much as he can with delicate touch in a way that not really anyone else has. And I keep going back to the fact that Banchero, I saw him play as a 16-year-old in Colorado Springs sitting there with college coaches, 3 summers ago, and he was the best guy in the gym then. And, Chet has been on a steady rise. I get that. But Banchero has never not been the guy, the best guy, the second best guy in his given class in a given year in whatever sport, high school, prep, college. It's always been him. So I keep going back to that. I think he's ready for it. And if he does fall to 3 tonight to Houston, the Rockets are in this amazing spot because they aren't given the paralyzation of choice. They'll take whoever's there and leave it to Orlando. If you're going to take Jabari, and if Oklahoma City is indeed going to take Chet Holmgren, then you get Banchero at 3. It's about as good of a value for a top 3 pick as I can remember in recent years.
Matt Norlander getting us ready for the NBA draft. All right, so what about Chet? This is the most unique player in the draft. As you wrote a few months back, Matt, we've never seen anybody like this in the game before. Knowing all of that, how challenging is he for front offices to evaluate?
He is challenging. Yes, he is the definition of unique. There is no comparison. He's not. Kristaps Porzingis is not an analog. Kevin Durant is not an A to A. You name the player. There's never been someone this tall, this skinny, with his skill, who also is that good defensively and kind of a space eraser, shot blocker. He's fascinating. But yes, I did have. I had someone in a front office tell me in the middle of last season he scares the bleep out of me. And the reason for that is, I found this interesting, 2 different NBA people who, as far as I know, really don't know each other that well. They both brought this up to me at separate points during the season, one during the season and one in the past couple of weeks here. But the talk with Zion Williamson going into that draft, there was never any doubt he was going to go 1. But the one thing you could attach to Zion Williamson that would have given you any pause is, how will he keep the weight off, or how will he play with that weight, and will he avoid injury because of it? We have seen what's happened. Zion Williamson's about to get paid anyway, but to this point, John Morant has been the more reliable and dependable NBA player. We'll see what happens here in the second contract for Zion. With Chet, there's some of that. He's never been hurt, but because he's not even 200 pounds, are we going to look up in 2, 3, 4 years? And he's just played off the floor because he doesn't have the strength. I was there in San Francisco, Jim, when Gonzaga got knocked out of the tournament by Arkansas, and a couple of those fouls that took him out of the game, I thought weren't the greatest calls by that officiating crew. But regardless, that was a high-level, very important, big-stage game. Chet Holmgren could not stay on the floor. Just because he's never been hurt before, are we going to see that his body type, that body structure against NBA big men, 82 nights a year, not 33 games or 40 games in a season, 82 games in a season, will he be able to sustain that? That's why there is some hesitation, and it's why, I just rank him 3rd long-term because I got to see it. That's all. He's super dedicated. The profile you're so generous to mention, Jim, I don't believe there's a player in this draft who is more obsessed with basketball and absolutely dedicated to being coached than Holmgren. I think that's an important thing to know as well. He wants no platitudes. He wants none of your compliments. He doesn't want to hear any of that stuff. He wants to live in a gym. It got to the point, Mark, you told me, where they had to seriously go to him and be like, no, Chet, you don't understand. We're not allowing you back in the gym right now. You have to give your body rest. And he would still try and find ways around it, go to an assistant and be like, man, just come get some shots up with me. That's a good thing, but at the same time, he's still got to learn to do what you want to do. There's a certain science to developing your body and not overdoing it there. And because of that, it's why front offices are really taken with him, but there's still hesitation, and I get it. Like, I get the jokes are going to be flying because of how he looks, but he's an awesome competitor, and I will be fascinated to see how his career goes from here because, again, never seen a guy like him.
It's so true. I mean, anybody who knows the guy would never, ever, ever question his dedication, his passion, his love of the game. It always comes back to his physique.